Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar that we're going to have today. Thank you so much for joining. There's a lot of people logging in, so that's great to see. So today we're joined by Margot Aron. She's a marketeer, a copy nerd, and a full-time writer at her website That Seems Important. So during these 30 minutes, Margot will be taking us through some key lessons on how to write a newsletter that your audience really want to read. So we are very excited to hear more about that. So she will be taking us through the presentation, and then we will save the questions to the end. But if you have any questions during the presentation, just type them in, and we will make sure to answer them. Yeah, so great. Over to you, Margot.
Hi, Celia. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone on the call. I'm sorry I can't see you all. So today we're going to be talking about how to write newsletters people actually want to read. Cecilia has given you a quick overview of me. I will just echo that with that I am the creator and writer of That Seems Important. I write a weekly newsletter. You can see my email stats below my picture right there. I've sent 126,000 emails just for my list alone, but I used to run a marketing consultancy where we also did this for clients. My background is actually in psychology. I'm a copywriter and marketer by trade. I am a former Ink contributor, and I'm the co-host of the internet talk show Hillary and Margot Yell at Websites. So today I spend most of my time teaching content creators how to be themselves in their work. And today we're going to talk about how you can write emails that people actually look forward to getting and really want to read. So we'll start with this. Why do you check your email? So this is when I ask these questions in crowds, I get a lot of answers. Well, I have to be on email for my work, or I get my travel reservations, Delta or United or Ryanair will send me a confirmation. My receipts all go there, or my mom forwards me things. But it tends to look like this is a list I made based on things people have told me and things that I have said. You don't need this list, but a baby shower evite, a Slack notification, a discount on shoes, a coworker wants to know if you're going to that event, an ambush introduction. Have you guys ever gotten that where it's someone who's well-meaning says, you need to meet so-and-so, and they send you an email, you two should get coffee, but they didn't ask your permission. So there's tons of things that are living inside of our inbox that have to do with interacting with people. There's always another person on the end of the interaction. Now, what I want you to see in this list is that none of these reasons to check email say, I go to check email to find out what's happening with that company. Nobody says that. So here's what I want you to take away. You check your email because there's something in it for you. And when we think about why your readers, why your customers, why your prospects check their email, they're asking the same question, which is, what's in it for me? Why should I care? So if you take nothing else away from today, I just want to open with this. Your marketing team should be talking about what's in it for your readers. Why should they care? What does it look like? Why did they sign up in the first place? So here's one thing to remember. Your readers are human beings, obviously. They're not animals or trees. And they are checking their inbox, and it's sitting next, your email is sitting next to their mom, their husband, daycare, the babysitter, the guy they're going on a date with, their boss, their manager, their coworker. All of these things are sitting inside of your inbox. And they are wondering, why should I care? What is it about what you have to say to me that matters? And so part of what your marketing team should know if you want to be good at email and write newsletters that people actually care about is, why do people read your emails? Why did they sign up for your list in the first place? What do they expect? If you bought the list illegally, or if you bought it and you never introduced yourself, you just started giving them emails out of the blue, do they know who you are? Do they know what your company does? Part of the role of your email is to connect what you have to say as a company to how it affects the people that you're writing. So one of the biggest mistakes that I have seen clients make is in assuming that email is this distribution channel for information you want to tell them. I had a client that was only ever pushing out emails. They'd say, oh, we have a new event, we have to let people know, which is helpful. People do want to know. But if the email becomes so self-involved that all it is you got to tell, I need to tell you about this product update. We need to tell you about this feature. We need to tell you about this new hire we got, this award we won, where it becomes all about just you and your company, and it doesn't connect to how it affects them. You train your readers to ignore your emails. And that's what you don't want. Instead, you want your email to make it really, really clear why they should care about that product update, why they might want to attend this event, why this award that your company just won even matters to them. Why do they even care? So all that to say, here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the difference between your newsletter and your sales emails. We're going to talk about the #1 mistake keeping you from great emails. We're going to talk about why I don't get it is your new positive indicator, why you need to give a reason why, the definitive answer on length and frequency, I get that asked a lot, how to format your emails, and how to know what to write about in your emails. Cool. And like Cecilia said, please insert your questions in or keep them. We'll get to all of them at the end. I don't think we can interrupt in the middle, even though I don't totally mind. All right, so let's start with this. What's the difference between your newsletter and your sales email? Okay, this is a long screen. Don't bother reading it. I'm just going to tell you. So a sales email tends to be from one person to one other person. Even if you're using a CSR like Salesforce, where you're sort of sending one to many, the point of a sales email is #1 to sell, but also to foster a relationship with one individual decision maker. And so you're usually putting people into a funnel. It's designed to mimic a one-on-one interaction. It has a distinctly sales purpose, and it tends to be a little more short tail. You're not sending a sales email each week or each month. And now you contrast that with a newsletter, which tends to be more of a broadcast email. And the point of a newsletter, it's a little bit more in the thought leadership and content marketing category, because part of the newsletter's role is to engender trust. So you can and you should sell in your newsletter, but it's not exclusively for sales. A newsletter isn't as transactional. So part of what you're doing is fostering a tribe, building community, remaining top of mind, cementing your status as a thought leader. It's a little bit harder to measure in that way because not all of your newsletters will be designed to increase click-throughs. You won't always have a call to action in your newsletter. Sometimes you're just letting people know information and adding value to their life. It's more of what we call a long tail game. So the main difference is sales emails are designed to sell. A newsletter is designed to build trust and engender thought leadership. It also can sell as a result, but it's not the main reason you send it. Now, to be clear, you can do both of these in tandem. You can do them together, and you should do them together. Today, we are talking about newsletters because, and they're in a distinctly different category because for the last, 20 years, they were on the down spiral. Everyone thought that the newsletter was dead. And then all of a sudden, there was a resurgence in this format of how to send emails to people in that newsletter format, and it was working. And this didn't make any sense. It went against all of your advanced email marketing concepts, like having autoresponder funnels and doing lead nurture sequences and opt-in sequences. You don't need to know all of that language. But those were sort of what everyone was talking about in the email marketing world. And then all of a sudden, we saw people like Tim Ferriss sending a once-a-week weekly newsletter in a very consistent format, and it was performing extraordinarily well. So I want to talk a little bit about why. So this is a newsletter from Timber Tax Accounting. They're a bookkeeping and accounting service firm. You don't need to read this. I will send you guys copies of these slides. But the main thing I want you to see is #1, they're formatted as a letter. It's like a letter to me that I'm getting. It says, "Hi, Margot, personally." But the topics it brings up, it talks about vulnerability. It talks about Seth Godin and Brene Brown, who are big thought leaders in the United States in the entrepreneurial world and in the psychology world and in marketing. So this is an email that's supposed to be about my taxes. So what's really stands out about this is how specific and niche it is to the type of person that TimberTax wants to attract more of. And so part of the thing that I want you guys to hear is that the biggest mistake that people make when they write newsletters is they write them to their colleagues. If another TimberTax person or another accountant read this, they would be bored. They wouldn't be interested. It would seem irrelevant or rudimentary. TimberTax is writing this directly to their customers and directly to their prospects. And the content, as a result, is distinct. It's different because you wouldn't talk to your colleague the same way you would talk to your customer. So, and it's also very specific to the type of customer. If TimberTax was targeting SaaS companies that had 200 employees or more, they probably wouldn't be talking about Seth Godin because those people aren't reading Seth Godin. Instead, he's talking about independent contractors, freelancers, employees, whether or not you want an employee or how to hire. Like these are issues that are very, very specific to his niche market. So the takeaway here is to write to your customers, not to your colleagues. It's very possible that your colleagues are reading your emails and they're probably reading your content, and they're probably the vocal minority that's really, really loud, maybe commenting on things on LinkedIn. But the thing that I need you to remember is that they are not buying from you. And when you send an email out, you are sending them either to prospects or existing buyers. Your audience is made up of people who will eventually buy from you or who have already bought for you. And they don't have the same problems or even the same jargon as the people in your niche, in your industry. They are different and distinctly different. And so when you write an email, I want you to write it to your customers and not your colleagues. Awesome. So here's another example of a company that does this really well. Again, they're using more of the letter format instead of the really over-designed blocks of predictable text where you kind of cut and paste. That's a fine format too. We'll talk about that later. But this is a men's fashion and styling company. It's called Essential Man. And this is the author or the founder actually wrote this email, and he's talking about an action movie. And he has a picture of two men not dressed well. They're very manly men who look like they don't really care about fashion. And part of why I wanted to bring this example in is, I don't know how much you guys know about the fashion industry, but typically people in fashion care a lot about trends. They care a lot about how a piece was constructed. They care a lot about scarcity. They care a lot about status. So who has been seen in the clothes, what media has covered the clothes. They care about price. They care about exclusivity. This is talking about action movies and confidence. And Peter, who's the founder of the company, often talks a lot about dating, confidence, and very, very nerdy films. And the reason he does that is that the people who this company serves are not people in fashion. In fact, they help regular, ordinary men with their style problems. And their style problems are built on the fact that they don't have enough confidence, they'd like to get a better date, they want to do better in their job interviews, and they want to present a certain way. And so the style problem they have, they're not really interested in high fashion at all. So Peter doesn't talk about high fashion. But if his colleagues read this, they would hate it. They would absolutely hate it. They wouldn't be interested in it. And so part of what I want you to see as a success metric for yourself is this bifurcating effect that talking directly to your audience creates. So by talking about this action movie, Peter actually creates two categories of people. People like us, people not like us. People who want to talk about these things, people who don't want to talk about these things. And that works. That works because you want your list of readers to be people who have the problem your company solves. And you get that by talking in their language, in their lexicon, about problems they have. So one last example, this is from Tim Ferriss. Now he has what's called a 5-bullet Friday. He invented that term. A lot of people, you see a lot of copycats coming up doing that. It's a great thing to copy if you're looking for a framework to use. So Tim covers certain topics around lifestyle design. He talks about stoicism a lot. He talks about cooking, and he's made his business is, in addition to his investing, he's known as a startup investor in the United States. He also has a personal brand. And so people care a lot about him as a celebrity and what he's interested in, what he's watching, and what he's doing. And so he capitalizes on this really nice by sharing what he likes personally, but also tying it to the interest that his audiences have. So this is an example of one category of his 5 bullets, which is purchase I'm enjoying. And he talks about this in-drawer bamboo knife block. You don't need to read it. It's super boring if you're not interested in knives and cooking. But if you are, it is one of the most interesting things you could read. People love his stuff. They buy from them. This is an affiliate link, so he usually is getting a cut of the sales. So there is, as I was saying earlier, there is a decidedly sales outcome here, but the goal is not to sell. The goal is to add value. And if you're reading this, or if you're thinking right now while you're listening to me, well, I don't really get it, like what's so interesting about this? It means it's not for you, because the people who get it are his people. It's his nerds. It's that bifurcating effect I was talking about. So to give you an idea of kind of what this looks like, here are 3 stacks of terms that demonstrate how we all have our own lexicon. So in the left bucket here, you see lizard brain, ruckus maker, the dip, purple cow, resistance. These are terms that you would care about if you read the author Seth Godin, and if you're a freelancer. People are almost all in tune with this. The middle one is if you're in the startup world, you say things like tech stack or Python or agile. You can use these words, and people in your niche won't say, what does that mean? Like if I said MVP to my mother, she would have no idea what that means. But if you're in SaaS and I say MVP to you, you know exactly what that means. It's a minimum viable product. Same thing on the far right, customer avatar, CTR, open rates, autoresponder, ESP. These are all marketing terms. So we all have our own lexicon, and what I would like to encourage you to do is double down on using your lexicon. When you're talking to people, you want things to feel like you're talking to an in-group member, that you have the specific language that they use, and it's okay if someone else doesn't understand it. In fact, this is not from an email. This is an example I think really illustrates the point that I'm trying to make here. This is my homepage. And the first time I showed it to my husband, he looked at it, he goes, I don't get it. And I was devastated. But when I show this at conferences, and when I put it up and I put it live about 3 or 4 years ago, people were laughing hysterically, which is probably what's happening in the audience right now. Like half of you are laughing and half of you are not. If you get the joke, you are probably someone who would enjoy my email list. If you don't get the joke, you are probably not someone who would enjoy my emails, which is the point of where I'm going here with what you should put in your newsletter. Everything should feel like an inside joke with your audience. So this acts as a wonderful filter for me, for people who should or shouldn't be on my list. Because if you don't think this is funny, if you're someone who's like my husband, you're probably not going to like my emails. You're probably never going to buy from me. You're probably not going to enjoy any of the things that I do or the topics I talk about. You'll probably never buy my book. So think of your newsletter topics and your content as a filter for people to help self-identify. I'm someone who would be interested in this. I am not someone who would be interested in this. I don't get it is your new positive indicator. If your copy and your content has the effect of someone saying, I don't get it, and someone saying, I do get it, then you're doing something right. Because those are the 2 categories you sort of want. And this is the key. You don't want everyone. You want the right people on your list. So I know a lot of people, when we talk about newsletters, want to know, well, tell me what to write. Tell me what content should go on there. And we'll talk about that a little later. But the thing that I want to drive home here is that it's not only about content, it's also about who's on the list. So if you've like purchased a list, for example, or if you don't know who's on your list, if it's a collaboration of several different lists that you've centralized in some way, you want to filter that, you want to segment it, you want to make sure that the right people are getting the right messages. And one way you can do that is with your newsletter, and seeing that the right people are getting the things, that your content is landing in the way that you need it to land. And the way that you know that is through open rates and through click-through rates. There are sort of proxy metrics for the things you're looking for. Also from responses. People think a newsletter is a one-way street. It doesn't have to be. If you use the letter format, or if you let people know that someone is reading the responses, you can say, respond to this email, tell us what you think. That's often a nice way for people to humanize your brand a little. And it's not a difficult thing to do, depending on the size of your list. There's a cap for how long that works. But in sum, everything should feel like an inside joke with your audience. All right, so we'll get a little more tactical here. The definitive answer on length and frequency. So let's start here. You've watched 7 seasons of Game of Thrones. Your attention span is fine. I am so tired of going to conferences where everyone says, it's got to be short, it's got to be no more than 200 words, you have to use lots of pictures, and you need to minimize content because people aren't paying attention. It's not true. So the reason to have short or long content has to do with your specific audience and your specific niche. If you are in my niche, which tends to be the marketing and entrepreneurship and creativity niche, long form works really well because our people are trained and enjoy long form, and they're often looking for topics you can't really Google. They're not looking for tactical answers, they're looking for really gray area, long, more nuanced responses. Now, contrast that with a friend of mine who runs a meal planning company. Her people are looking for recipes. So they want pictures, they want examples, they want recipes, so they need a list. If I sent that to my audience, they'd be disappointed. If she sent what I send to my audience to hers, they'd be disappointed. So the reason to have short or long depends on the expectations of your audience and your niche. And then number 2, your abilities. The thing that no one seems to be talking about is if you're sending a long email or a short one, and people are saying my attention span is just too short, I can't pay attention. The real thing that they're communicating to you is that your email is probably very boring and very poorly written. And that sometimes is because there's not an actual copywriter writing the emails. Maybe it's a marketer who isn't trained in copywriting. Maybe it's a staffer. Maybe you're just doing it because you want to please your boss, which is most newsletters, just want to please the CMO or whoever the manager is. So when it comes to length, consider, I like to use the advice that Stephen King says. He wrote the book On Writing, and he's a horror genre author. He says the story should be as short or long as necessary to tell the story. So you have to learn to be a good judge of, is what we're telling them relevant? Is it interesting? Did we deliver the information in a way that was overly verbose? Did we make it overly professional? Did we make it really conservative? Because you also have to consider this is going in an email inbox next to a lot of very casual writing. So if you're writing in a buttoned up way, it's not going to land in the same way. Your white paper can be professional, but your email introducing your white paper should be a bit more casual. So considering the context is also really important here when you're determining what length your email should be. Now, as for frequency, here's a picture of all the emails I got from Gap from the week of January 27th to February 2nd, I think a year ago. And what I want you to see here is I got 12 emails in 1 week. So that means sometimes it was 2 in a day. Now, most people say, this is really annoying. This is so annoying, and I don't want to be annoying. That's one of the biggest fears I hear from people, is that I just don't want to annoy people. But here's the secret. So remember we talked about the difference between sales emails and newsletters? A sales email actually performs better with increased frequency, especially if you're having a closed cart. You want to remind people the event starts tomorrow. Bright Vision probably sent you a few emails to say, hey, don't forget you have a webinar tomorrow. Hey, don't forget, here's the link. Hey, it's starting in an hour. All of those are actually helpful if you want the thing that's being sold. So in this case, my webinar. If you were interested in the topic, you probably didn't find it annoying. You were probably really grateful that Bright Vision sent you a reminder. So everything is annoying unless you're the market. If you're the market, then you're really, really grateful. I know that if I want to buy pants from Gap, so if we go back and, if we go back and look here at everything that Gap is selling, expiring tonight, 50% off sale. That's actually really helpful to me. And part of the reason is something called toilet email. It's a concept my friend Sarah K. Peck, who runs Startup Pregnant, made up. If you don't follow her company, it's fantastic. It's about the intersection of pregnancy and business. But the thing about toilet email is the majority of people are checking their email while they're doing something else, like sitting on the toilet or being in a meeting or trying to catch the subway or the train, or maybe their husband calls in the middle. So you get distracted. So the increased frequency is actually appreciated when it's something you want. However, if you're sending a newsletter, this is a little bit different because you don't have a close cart and you're not reminding someone of anything. You're sending out content usually that has a distinctly value add, thought leadership, and tribal angle. And so what you need from a newsletter is a cadence that you've committed to. So weekly, bi-weekly, monthly. It doesn't really matter what cadence you commit to, what frequency you commit to, as long as you're consistent. As long as you don't decide to send your newsletter once and then I forgot and now I'm going to send it and I'm going to do it again. Like, you want to train your readers to expect something consistent from you. So if you want to do a daily newsletter, you could, theoretically. I think it works better with sales. Like, Gap is having a sale. So clearly it's sending a lot of emails to remind me. It's probably also tracking what I'm clicking on. So again, this is the difference between advanced sales emails that are segmenting and that are putting me into a funnel based on my clicking habits and my buying behavior, versus a newsletter that's distributing out information that's not necessarily as advanced, but is fostering that image of thought leadership and engendering trust in my tribe. Cool. Okay, I want to make sure we stay on time so we have time for questions. So last note of like really tactical things. I'll go through this a little quickly. You guys will get copies of this, so don't worry, and you can take screenshots of the screen. So formatting tips to increase readability. So let's start first. Whether you use HTML, plain text, or images, it doesn't matter as much as you think. Everybody is concerned that this is going to have some huge effect on deliverability and reading. It really doesn't have as big of effect as you think, with the exception of sales emails that are directly from a person. So if you're sending an email that's supposed to be like, I'm sending you an email as Margot selling, let's say, Cecilia, then it probably needs to be plain text, so it looks like an email from me directly instead of a newsletter with a logo on top, for example. But what you choose is up to you. It's your choice the way you want to do it. The thing that matters is that design serves the message. So any design that you choose should make it easier for someone to read. It shouldn't make it pretty. It shouldn't make it clever. It shouldn't make it creative. What it should be is easier to read. That's it. So I'm going to give you some examples of how to do it. Now, I purposely made this slide very difficult because I wanted you to see what happens when you don't format well. So it's not to say that formatting doesn't work or doesn't matter. It does matter. But as I wrote at the bottom, be strategic. There's a reason I put that in red. Be strategic with your formatting. The design should serve the content. It should serve the message. So these are a few copywriting hacks that we use in the copy world when we work with design. So I'm going to go over really, really quickly, very top level. These should be pretty easy and tactical for you to implement. So just, it's your choice, but serif and sans serif fonts are the easiest to read. If you're going to use bold, only bold when you want someone's attention. So you can assume someone is just skimming your email most of the time. So if they're skimming, you want to format in a way that allows them to get the main takeaways. So that includes breaking up your text with spaces, putting breaks like an image in it, headlines, because if you have a large block, hard to read. So you want to assume the reader is scanning the page. Also, if you have really, really important information and you're using the letter format, put it in the PS. People always read the PS for some reason. That's where the best calls to action, you can hide them there. 1.15 to 1.5 spacing is easier to read than single or really double. So the point here is design should serve the content. So this is a very difficult slide to read. As you can see in the last bullet point, it says large bullet point lists are really tough to read. So if you want people to read them, you should break them up into 2 lists and keep them no more than 4. So I want to give you an example of someone who does this really well. That is MemberVault. They're a SaaS company. So this is the top. This is their newsletter. They use a combination of newsletter and sales, but as you can see here, you don't need to read it, but simply see that they have used all caps really strategically. They have used color and hyperlinks strategically. But the main thing that they've done is explain to me why it matters. You can share your feature requests right here. So if you're a regular company, you would probably say, please send us your feature requests. They have now turned this into a, oh, I can get something out of this. They're trying to help me. So they position themselves as something that's useful, that's in my own best interest, something they're doing for me. And they're also communicating, oh my Lord, what is going on with today? Our luck, I swear. What can you see? There we go, we're back. So they're also communicating how playful they are. They're communicating, they use emojis, they are being really strategic about how they use italics. And more importantly, what I want to show you is what's under this. It's called below the fold, which is underneath where you scroll. There's what you see when you first open an email, and then there's what you see as you scroll down. It's called below the fold. And they use design really nicely here to demonstrate expertise, but also to tell me the only information that I really need to know, which is how the redesign will impact my account. And they put it in a gray box. Again, they're using all caps very strategically with what they want me to take away. And the answer is, I don't have to do anything. So they're adding value to my day. And then they've decided to use images here to demonstrate that they have fun, and also to allow for a break in the text so it's nice on my eyes. Now, this might not be your brand might not be super playful, but that is what their brand is. And so they've used design as a way to underscore things about their brand while also adding value and making me not do any work. So this is one really great example of a SaaS company using design in order to better write their newsletters. So the last thing I'll say before we sign up is this question is how to know what to write about in your emails. And it's sort of a cheat question because the answer is contained in the first question I asked you. Why are people on your list? What did you promise them? What did you say that you would tell them? I would start there with your team in brainstorming what those people care about. What do your readers care about? And the best way to know that is to actually talk to them. So something a few advanced email marketers that I know do is they'll send out an email to people who open the most of their emails and say, hey, would you mind jumping on a call with us? And they try and get about 10 to 30 people to talk to them. And usually you don't need to offer an incentive. People are just excited to talk. And you can ask them, I've done this with my list. Why did you sign up? What did you think this was? Are we delivering on what you thought? What else do you read? What are you interested in? You might find that, they're tangentially interested in topics that you could mention in your newsletter. You might learn more about what they struggle with and how your product or service might solve the thing they struggle with. A good example is SEO companies. If you have an SEO company, you could see like what are people most embarrassed about when it comes to SEO? What do they think they should have had figured out by now? What frustrates them most about the software they were using before they moved to you? What products, features do they not know that they even have access to that you guys do? Just listing all the different ways in which you can add value to people is a great place to start to know what to write about in your emails. And then looking outside tangentially of what might be interesting to them, things. I know a fitness company that discovered that their people are really, really into video games. And so they mention things about video games and connect video gaming to fitness. It's called Nerd Fitness. And that's a really smart way to own your niche and talk and differentiate yourself through your email newsletters. And so there's no shortage of topics as long as you are talking to your actual customers and getting to know them. One last way that you can do this is encouraging people to respond to the emails you write and having it function as a two-way street, where perhaps you throw out a question and they respond and tell you a little bit about themselves and discover that there might be a real person on the other side. And it's not just a one-way interaction. You don't have to do that, but there are different ways in which you can connect with the person on the other side of the screen. All right, and that is everything. I'm Margot Aaron. I'm sorry we got disconnected. You can connect with me on Instagram or Twitter, or shoot me email with any follow-up questions here at margot@thatseemsimportant.com.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Margot. We have got one question during the webinar that would be great if you could answer, and that is like, how do you know if your emails, what is good metrics for your newsletter?
Yes.
Do you have any examples?
Yes. So this goes back to what your goals are, because I think the metrics are going to be different depending on what you want your email newsletter to do. So the main metrics that you look at to determine what's working are open rates and click-through rates. So an open rate is what percentage of people out of your entire list have actually opened the email. And then the click-through rates is of the people who opened, what percentage of them actually clicked on a link you wanted them to click on. Now, the reason that these can get confusing is sometimes your newsletter doesn't ask someone to click. So it could be that you have a highly engaged audience, but you have a medium or low click-through rate because you didn't have a very strong call to action, or you weren't tracking those links. So the health of the list is usually determined by those two things. I know a lot of people worry about unsubscribes. They think if they have a high unsubscribes, that's a bad thing. That's another number that your email service provider offers you. I actually don't think unsubscribes are bad. I think unsubscribes are really helpful because those are people who are no longer interested in what you are selling or what your product does, and so they're probably not going to buy from you anyway. So it's better that they're off your list. So list size is another thing people look at, but it's less to do with email and more to do with acquisition. So the offer that you make to them as to why they should join. And the reason I'm being a little amorphous with how to tell if your email is working is because the numbers are also not totally reliable, because your open rates, for example, can be really affected by deliverability. So the ranking of your email service provider, if you have a really strong and good email service provider, you're probably going to be greenlit into other people's inboxes just fine. But there's other things that account for deliverability. Like if you don't put an unsubscribe button at the bottom of a broadcast email, Google will usually catch that after a while, and they'll de-promote your emails. There's little things like that. If you are selling things that are considered not allowed or doing it in a shady way, that can also affect deliverability. If you use curse words in your subject line, that could affect deliverability. So open rates are also a hard thing to test, but they're nice proxy metrics as to what's working. So for me, I use open rates as a metric, which is why I'm very proud of having a 50% open rate, because that tells me that I am getting, I'm having and I'm keeping people's attention. But the part that's important to me that I would say to take away, if part of what you're doing with your newsletter, if your goal is engagement and keeping people's attention, is I would look at your numbers over time. That's more interesting to me than your, how one campaign performed. So if your open rates are consistent over time, like if it's 50%, 50%, 49, 54, 49, 42, if you're within a certain range, that is a much better, a more helpful indicator than one specific campaign. Because it's really easy for me to increase click-through rates if I say, click here to win an iPad. obviously my click-through rates are going to go up, but that's not a particularly useful number for me. So you want to look at your performance over time. And you also want to look, like, if something dips. Like there was one week where I had a 29% open rate after having a 50% open rate for weeks. And so that was very confusing to me. So that usually is an indication either something was really bad about my subject line, or it wasn't being delivered. Something was wrong. It was marked as spam. Something happened. So I think that the metrics are much more of an indication that things are going okay than like a definitive number. Does that help?
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much, Margot. Yeah, I think that was all the questions. I'm so happy to have you as a speaker. Thank you so much, everyone, for everyone that signed up to listen to this webinar. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye, everyone.